Hello everyone, it's Richard Lewis here again with another video. Just a quick one today, but an important one. We know that the London Major is coming for CSGO. It's going to be run by Faceit, a great organization. Had the pleasure of working for them, with them, pretty much since their inception. So I'm doubly pleased that, first of all, a sort of startup company within esports that was all esports focused right from the start has gone on to achieve a level of excellence where they're awarded a major, but also as well that it's going to be in London. The UK has certainly contributed a lot to Counter-Strike history, mostly of late on the broadcasting side, but certainly in the past, in previous iterations of Counter-Strike, there have been some notable UK players, notable UK teams. So anyway, one of the things we've talked about a lot down the years is, does Valve care about any of the news stories that get broken? Does Valve pay attention? All this stuff about whether or not Valve has a vested interest in driving forward their esports for Counter-Strike, the esports scene for Counter-Strike. Now, as somebody that's had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with guys from Valve at events, I know, of course, it's absurd to imply that they do not care about their game, about the scene. It's one of the things that always blows my mind. They certainly listen, they certainly pay attention. And as somebody who's been breaking a lot of these stories, they've always made it clear to me that there is a channel of communication open to me. If I think something might have got away from them, I can just email them, and I have done in the past. If I think there's a new cheat or whatever it is, the doors are very much open. I can reach out to them and get that information there to them. Now, one of the big talking points of late has been conflict of interest and people trying to own multiple teams. And certainly some of the leagues have taken a stance against this. ESL and WESA, for example, that's the World Esports Association. They've taken a stance against multiple team ownership. They've said unequivocally, you're not going to be able to do that by this date, and you must divest yourself of any ownership. And we've seen it in other esports as well. Riot Games have selectively applied their rules to LCS, but in principle, it's the same thing. Everybody recognizes that having teams competing in a league where outcomes dictate huge amounts of money, sponsorship, millions of dollars, probably is a bad idea to have the same financial controlling interests behind two teams that could, I'm not saying they would, but could potentially collude and fix an outcome. And it creates doubt in people's minds. It's not good for optics. And this has been going on in Counter-Strike for a long period of time. And Valve have remained quiet on it because that is Valve's style. Valve are very hands-off. They like to take a backward step, see how everything's evolving, see how things impact, and then make some decisions accordingly. And so they've never publicly commented about this, but I know that, first of all, they're aware of it. Second of all, that they don't particularly like it. And lo and behold, I was just looking through the rules for the Faceit qualifiers just the other day, with a big tournament coming out, with these minors coming along. Obviously, you look at the rules, see if anything's changed, just so you know what you're talking about. You obviously do a bit of punditry. Still available for work, obviously, so might do some commentary on an event, might do some hosting on an event. So I wanted to know the rules, so I'm just looking through the rules, and something very interesting popped out. It was a new rule that has been added for these qualifiers, and I will assume going forward for this major and all other majors. And if you see here, I've just picked one of the qualifiers at random. This is the Faceit Major CIS Open Qualifier. And if you click on See Rules and you scroll down to Section 6, you can see here, first of all, just a clarification. This is nothing to do with the video, but may as well tell you while we're here. any form of collusion or match fixing in order to manipulate the results of a tournament will result in disqualification. That's not new, but again, it just to be clear, any form. We've had a lot of debates lately about, do you need to any form? But then this 6.7 entry restrictions is completely new. Teams and players should not have any financial interest in the success of any team that they are competing against. To participate in the 2018 Fall Major, players and teams are required to affirm that they have no business entanglement, including but not limited to shared management, shared ownership of entities, licensing, and loans with any other participating team or its players. If teams or players have an agreement or business arrangement that may be of concern, then please reach out to the tournament officials for further discussion. Now, that's very clear that if there's going to be two teams at the major that have almost any overlap, not sponsors, but beyond that, if a player owns shares in a team and they're going to compete, if a team has the same management, think, for example, ES Force with their media rights purchases. It's now very clear that if you want to compete in a qualifier where you're likely to come up against a team, and then obviously by extension, if you qualify for the major along with another one of those teams, it will apply to the major as well. Basically, this now rules out these multiple team-owning entities, players owning shares in a team, then going and creating another team. Anything that could lead to collusion is now going to be addressed. Interestingly enough, my sources have told me this isn't a face-it stipulation. This is something that came from Valve, so it's come from on high, and it's just in there. No big announcement, no fuss, no song or dance, but it makes a huge difference. Certainly, teams that immediately come to mind, or rather organizations that immediately come to mind, are going to be ES Force. Potential interests, well, certainly in Virtus Pro and SK Gaming. And of course, there's this whole are they, aren't they with Na'Vi. Then you've got, obviously, Refresh. Certainly with the European minors, there's a chance that we might see Refresh teams qualify. They still haven't sold Godsent. They still own Heroic. Obviously, they own Astralis. This could create this conflict of interest that may mean one of these teams has to drop out, or they have to push through a super fast sale to such a degree that it satisfies Valve that there is no shared ownership or anything like that. So while I think that rule is quite clear, I'm sure there'll be a lot of these organizations, perhaps players. Just to give you another example, we heard a lot about how Refresh were giving out player ownership, which was a very small percentage of shares, but some of those teams have now moved on to other rosters, yet apparently still own shares in those Refresh teams. So again, that could create an issue for the players. And you'll notice Valve are very clear, they've listed players as well. It's not just ownership and big corporations, players too. So there is a potential here that I think we could see a team maybe discounted from competing at the major, or having to rush through a sale so they can compete at the major. I think with all of the stuff around SK and Immortals coming out, does make you wonder now whether SK have been able to, because it's a roster issue, whether SK Gaming are like, well, we can't do it at the major anyway, so maybe they'll compete at the major under the Immortals name. There's a lot of things here that come out of just this simple rule change. Just to sort of give my opinion on it, I think this is long overdue. I think we were heading towards the absurd for a very brief period of time, and we've course corrected. There was organizations that made it very clear their modus operandi was to come in, own as many teams as possible, potentially competing in a exclusivity league that they then controlled, like some big sort of huge franchising thing. I think that was Refresh's original plan. And that's not what I want for Counter-Strike, and I think that's a terrible move for any esport at all, especially with the esports betting scene opening up. We've got, licensed esports books now in Vegas. We need to have absolute confidence that these results are not going to be tampered with by financial interests. And not only that, I mean, we all know how lucrative the major is. Certainly, one of the big criticisms about the Counter-Strike esports scene is that we've seen it from all these like lower tier organizations. There's no way to make money. Well, the major is the way to make money. Obviously, you've got your sticker sales, which organizations are very keen to make that money. Even though there's been diminishing returns since they were brought in, if you look at the chart. But it's still a revenue stream for having a CS team, and the more popular your team, the more money you're going to make. Obviously, being in the major just for that alone is a big deal. And we could, I'm not saying we would, but we could see a situation where teams could potentially collude on an outcome to ensure that you're going to be there or thereabouts to get stickers and whatnot. So again, it's just better to not have that there. Nobody can accuse anybody of anything. People can have utter confidence that everything's above board, and that's what this rule is clearly designed to do. So I thought it was interesting that this wasn't made a bigger deal of it. I stumbled across it and immediately sort of talked to some of my sources about it yesterday. And this is a huge step in the right direction. And just to end the video sort of on something else I'll talk about in another video at another time. This is a big change for Valve, honestly, to sort of implement this rule. And a lot of people have probably noticed there's changes at Valve. I don't want to call it a culture change, but I think it's interesting that we're now seeing Valve talk to the community. We've seen a lot from John McDonald. He's been doing a lot of Twitter AMAs. We've seen them address concerns, community concerns like the iBuyPower bans, right up to when's the Panorama UI coming out. All of this stuff. Not only that, Valve they've revamped the website. There's a lot going on over at Valve right now, and I'm looking forward, actually, because I remember there was this fad where if you wanted to get a lot of clicks, what happened was there was like they'd finally, the Half-Life 3 script got leaked by one of the original writers, and everyone was like, oh, I want it, the fanboys of that series. And then they were like, Valve don't make games. Everyone made a video, Valve don't make games. And then they announced Artifact, and there was that famous clip where the crowd were like, oh, it's a collectible card game. And everyone was a little bit disappointed, and they were going, oh my god, it's just another money grab. All early reports are Artifact's going to be fucking amazing, revamp the collectible card game genre, and just be an amazing game in its own right, whether you like Dota or not. So everyone needs to fucking suck it up. Like, Valve are not the villains they very often get painted out as. I think this rule is going to be a great thing for the scene, a great thing for the community, and it shows they pay attention to very real concerns in the esports side of the Counter-Strike scene. Anyway, so tell me what you think about it. Post some comments in, see you on Reddit, etc. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. And yeah, looking forward to the major. Take care.